Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal, Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. Today we're coming to you from the great state of North Carolina. We're going to be spending our day in Charlotte, and we're going to see one of the homes of the great actor Randolph Scott, as well as his grave. Daze with Jordan the Lion, and you all, it begins right now. What an interesting story he has. There's always been some rumors about his friendship with Cary Grant. I'll go into both sides of that. That's the thing that people always talk about, but he was one of the greatest Western actors of all time. He was actually born in Virginia while his parents were on vacation. They came back and settled here in Charlotte. So let's go see the home that his family built. Billy Graham Parkway. Don't worry, Joster's here. You're here, aren't you? So Randolph Scott's name was actually George Randolph Scott, but as a boy he went by Randy. And unlike a lot of actors, he actually came from a pretty well-to-do family. His father had a really great job that I'll explain to you in a little bit, but his mother actually came from family money. So Randolph Scott was able to go to private schools throughout his upbringing. So he actually didn't grow up most of his time in the Charlotte area. He was living in Virginia at a boarding school, but once he graduated, he ended up joining the military because of World War I breaking out. He had wanted to be a football player while he was in high school and everything. He really excelled at that, so that was his plan until World War I came about. Then he became an artillery observer during the war, and when that ended, he came out, went to Georgia Tech to play football, and unfortunately had an injury that was permanent. They said he would never be able to play again, and so he ended up transferring to University of North Carolina, studying finance and bookkeeping, and then came back to Charlotte and started working for his father as a bookkeeper until he decided in 1928 that he thought he wanted to be an actor. So I was kind of surprised when I found that one of his homes was still here, because it said that the home was built in 1926 and that the family moved in 1927, but Randolph Scott was born in 1898, so I was like, he would have been 29 still living with his family, but I guess it kind of makes sense because he wasn't married and he was working for his father. Came from kind of a big family. I think he had 6 siblings, so he only lived in this house for about a year. They say his father was extremely influential in this town. Everyone knew of him because he was the city alderman, the chairman of Charlotte's finance committee, CEO of his own accounting firm, and so he also supervised the city's first published financial statement in the early 1900s. So to say that he was big time in this town would be an understatement. He also had connections that went far beyond Charlotte, because when Randolph decided when he was about 29 that he wanted to study acting and become an actor, he asked his father to write a letter to his friend Howard Hughes to see if he could get him in. So he did, and Randolph took that letter off to find Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes put him in his first pictures as an extra. So of course during that time, that's when he moved to Hollywood. He was out in Hollywood, and for about 2 or 3 years he was just doing bit parts, really getting no recognition. And then Cecil B. DeMille saw him and said, you should go to the Pasadena Playhouse and study there. And he did, which is where a lot of people that became well-known actors like William Holden and others, that's where he developed, and Paramount Scouts saw him in a play there and signed him to a contract. His family kept this for a very long time, so he would come back and visit throughout his entire life. He never came back and lived here. He would live in Beverly Hills, but he would come back here when his father passed away and his mother passed away, and to visit family members as he was becoming a star. Now Randolph's actually buried here in town, not far, at Elmwood Cemetery, so let's go visit him and talk a little bit more about his story. So Randolph and his family are buried about 10 minutes away from here, 2.5 miles. Wow. Look at that sign for Jim Crockett Memorial Park. Jim Crockett Promotions, that's awesome. In front of us it says Charlotte's oldest restaurant, Green's Lunch. Saw those and I couldn't pass it up. Homewood Cemetery. His grave is actually noted on Google Maps in here to take you right to it. So it appears that Randolph Scott's entire family plot is right here. Randolph himself is right there. His father is right here. His mother is right here. I'll show you some of them if you'd like to see. There's the S for Scott. Like I said, her family was very wealthy. There's Joseph Crane Scott. And his brother, Barbara Scott. Beloved wife of George Grant Scott, which was his father. There's George. And then over here, actually turned around, is Randy. George Randolph Scott, known as a boy to all of his friends, family as Randy. Once he started acting, he dropped George and just went by Randolph. And actually, one of his lifelong friends is buried here in Charlotte as well, Reverend Billy Graham. George Randolph Scott, January 23rd, 1898 to March 2nd, 1987. Lived a long life, 89 years. Beloved husband of Patricia, devoted father of Sandra and Christopher. And here you can see Patricia Stillman Scott, his second wife. February 16th, 1919 to May 3rd, 2004. Beloved wife of Randolph. Married March 3rd, 1944 to his passing March 2nd, 1987. Loving mother of Sandra and Christopher. So Randolph Scott's career really took off basically when he got that contract in about 1931. He started making movies. He actually made Henry Hathaway's first directorial debut movie, and then the same year he got cast with Cary Grant in Cary Grant's first starring role in a movie called Hot Saturday, and they became fast friends, and that started a rumor that has never ended to this day. So basically what happened was they met on set, became great friends right away, and decided to move in together. And they moved into a house on Malibu for a little while, and then got a big mansion in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills. And it became a bachelor pad. They actually called it Bachelor Hall. Now that's where the rumor started. People started saying, because these guys got along so great and they lived together, they had lived together for 2 years until Cary Grant was kind of basically, they say, forced to get married by the studio. They lived together there happily, having fun and entertaining friends of both genders all the time. But the studio was convinced that people thought that they were gay, and there was, you know, there was this anti-pansies act going on that you would be blacklisted if they found out if you were either portraying that in a movie or living that in your personal life. It was just like, absolutely, your career was over. So Cary Grant would tell his girlfriend Maureen Donaldson that she would talk about in her book. She said they actually loved that people thought this, because he said they had women coming and going all the time because the studio thought that they were possibly gay. That he said, you know, they encouraged us to have women over all the time, and so then we actually got to be real playboys about it. But then people like Mr. Blackwell, who was kind of known in the fashion world as that name before he ever was that character or went by that name, he said that he lived with them and and that they were actually a couple behind closed doors, and that they were like very in love and this and that. Now, Randolph Scott's son has come out and said that is, quote, bullshit, and that he doesn't believe it. Maureen Donaldson never believed it. She said Cary never led her to believe that that was the case. But then there was reports like people like Scotty Bowers, who was known as the Hollywood pimp to the stars. He had like a gas station that he would meet up with men and do things. He would claim that both of those guys would come and visit him. There was a book that came out where the maitre d' of the Beverly Hillcrest Hotel said that later in their 70s, they came in and had dinner one night, and once everybody left, they were holding hands. I don't know. It's personally like really none of our business, but they were close their entire life. And sadly, the story was that when Cary passed away, Randolph Scott actually passed away right after. And when he found out that Cary passed away, he just broke down crying in his hands. And then, you know, very shortly, within months, he passed away himself. So regardless of all of that, Randolph Scott was a phenomenal actor. He acted in movies. He acted in Roberta, where he got to actually play a football player, which was like his life dream, with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And he became lifelong friends with Fred Astaire also. When he ended up retiring from acting, he would spend a lot of his time hanging out with Fred Astaire, either golfing or going to Dodger games or listening to Dodger games together. Randolph had a fantastic career. He ended up making 100 movies, 60 of which were actually Westerns. He loved doing Westerns and kind of got to a point where he just said, that's all I want to do. He had done just about everything. It's not that he was a particularly fantastic actor. It's just that he came off so laid back and so kind of everyman and charismatic and just, you know, non-confrontational on film, that he had a likability to him, so he could play various different roles, drama, suspenseful things. He loved doing the Westerns. So like I said, he just got to a point where he decided, I only want to do what I want to do. And so he only made Westerns for the continuation of his career. And then when he finally made one that he thought was really good, he just decided, I'm done acting. And for the last 25 years of his life, he stepped away from public life, no longer acted in anything, and enjoyed his life. He's buried here with Patricia, his second wife, but his first wife was Marion DuPont, and she came from the DuPont family fortune. So he had married her and just said it didn't last. They were only together for 3 years because he said that their schedules were so opposite, with him making movies and her social life and everything. He said they just never really had time together, so you couldn't really keep a marriage together when you didn't see each other that often. But what was ironic was that she had been, you know, married for 10 years before they got together, and her first husband had Randolph Scott as his best man for their wedding. But he ended up meeting Patricia, who I believe was an actress. He met her on set. They fell in love and had a wonderful relationship the rest of their life. They were together in love by all accounts, and Randolph lived a very happy, wealthy life. He made a lot of really smart financial decisions as far as what he invested his money in. So when he retired, he had a very, very lucrative income. And when I say Randolph Scott retired with a lot of money, I'm talking $100 million, a lot of money, back when $100 million was a lot of money. And I believe when Patricia and Randolph got married, they had like a 21-year separation in their ages, and they actually together adopted Sandra and Christopher, their children. Randolph is always described as a very nice man. Directors that worked with him would say when no one else on the set was a gentleman, you could count on Randolph Scott to be a gentleman. Fortunately, even though he lived a nice long life, he passed away of heart and lung ailments that he had been suffering with for years. And they had a very small cemetery burial funeral service here, attended by just a couple of friends and family, and was presided over by his friend, Reverend Billy Graham. So his three best friends in his life, it was said, were Reverend Billy Graham, Cary Grant, and Fred Astaire. Thank you for your service, and you got to give him credit for this also. Not only did he enlist for World War I because he just thought it was his patriotic duty, when World War II broke out, he tried to enlist again, but they actually rejected him because of the football injuries he had to his leg. They said he was not fit for service, but he wanted to. If you'd like a great movie of Randolph Scott's to check out, I would recommend Ride the High Country, which was the last one that he made, and that was the one where he decided he just didn't need to make any movies anymore after that. Rest in peace, Randolph Scott and Patricia Stillman Scott. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this vlog. Thank you all for watching. We will see you all next time from somewhere else in the world. Have a great night. And goodbye.